Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Benedict here again from Jeligan Company's Sheets, and today I want us to see how we can add values in DataFrame horizontally or vertically. So I'll just take you back to where we are doing our Python code. Then from there we can see how we add values vertically and horizontally. So on my screen here I have a dictionary. Then the dictionary here is labeled data. So let's just make this dictionary data frame. So we'll say data, rather let's just call it df. Df is equal to pd dot data frame, then in bracket I will reference the variable called data. Then from here again, now I can also print the data frame. So you see how it looks like. So this is our data frame, and I can see we have 7 columns with the expenses at the last column, and then we also have 5 rows. Rather, we have 6 rows. So we want to move. We want to make this column called expenses as our index column. So down here we'll come and say we'll say df is equal to df dot set index. So here the index here should be expenses. So when I come down here and print df, so our index column should not be 0, 1, 2, 3 to 5, but would be expenses, labeled salaries, repairs, rates up to accommodation. So let me just create a space in between the data frames. So here we'll say modified df. It has been modified in terms of changing making a column, using a column as an index. So here structure. So let's see what we have as our modified data frame. Now down here you can see we have our index column as expenses. Now we have 6 rows. So first what we want to do is to see how we can add these values within these columns. We want to add them. We want to get the total of expenses. So we'll add the values vertically, get the total value of expenses. So let's write down here adding the values of data frame vertically. So this will be down. I will be adding them, getting the total vertically across the columns. So what we need to do here, I will say, so the last row we want to call, we want to label it total expenses. So what we'll do here, we'll say df then we use the subscript, then now we say total expenses. So let's call it total indirect expense. Total indirect expense is equal to df. So we must use a double square brackets. We want to add the values within these columns from January to June. So now we must mention all the columns. So it start with Jan, then we move to Feb, then we go to March, then April, then May, then June, and here we'll write dot sum. We are summing the values. So let's see what we have after summing. So we'll say print in brackets so let me call this so let me just call it total expenses. And now we have df. You see when what is not happening? Not giving us the total. I don't know what is not happened. All expenses. And then it is not summing the values. So what has happened? Okay, yes, I did not write here .log. So that was an error. Let's run it again. Now you can see we have down here we have total indirect expenses with the total values of each and every column. So that's how to add vertically values within a data frame. But let us assume now you want to subtract the values. So let's try to create another data frame called sales. So we're going to create a data frame for gross, can call it gross profit or gross margin. So we can call this one as GP. GP is equal to, let's call it sales underscore GP. Sales gross margin, gross margin is equal to, so I want to create a dictionary, and that dictionary I need to put it within a data frame. So I'll start with the pd dot data frame, then in bracket So dictionary must be within curly brackets. So what I will do here, I will call it gross margin gross margin. So gross margin, you want to give values of gross margin. It should not be gross margin, it should start with January, February, March. Those are the column labels. So we'll start with Jan. So Jan, you want to give a value. So let's assume that this is just an example we are trying to provide. So I want to make all the values for gross margin. For the gross margin as let's say 35,000. So let's say the first stage for January is 35,000. Let me put it within square brackets. So this is 35,000. So the next one for February, let's put 3,500. Then we have March. For March, you can say is 33,200. Then we go to April. For April, let's say it is 3,900. So we want to make a loss, 3,900. Then May we have 3,100 as gross sales. And we also have June. June is let's say 31,000. And then we also want to make our index. So the raw index will be gross margin, because this is just a single row data frame. So we'll call it here gross margin. So down here, let's see what we have as our sales GM. Let me try to create a space. This is gross margin sales. Let me just try to put it down. So let's see what the data frame that we have for gross margin sales. So let's print this. Let me put this in square brackets. That was the error that I did, I guess so. So this is the gross margin that we have. So we have gross margin sales, and this is the data frame that we have down here. We have our row is the index label is gross margin, and then we also have these other columns with values. So again, within this gross margin cells, I want to add another row here, which will be the header for indirect expense. So what I will come down here, I will say sales gross margin .log. So here is indirect expenses is equal to 0. Let me say is equal to, because I'm creating a blank row with which will be the header of indirect expenses. I'll use this blank space. So down here now you can say print bracket sales. Let me try to comment out the first printout. Let's run this code. So now you can see we have this data frame that has a gross margin as the first row, and the second row we have indirect expenses. So if you wanted to add some values, maybe we'll say is equal to 0. When I run it now, you can see now the indirect expenses here is 000 up to June. But what you want to do is to have a header for indirect expenses. So that's why I'm writing this. I'm using blank values. So it is a string, but the values are blank. So here I can say, let me just create a space in between. So this is the data frame from rather for gross margin sales. So with this data frame, I want to concatenate this data frame with the first one, such that we'll have gross margin. Then under gross margin, we'll also have indirect expenses, and the indirect expenses will be listed like in this data frame that we have for total expenses. So the total expenses, rather the rows for expenses will be listed down under indirect expenses. So let's just try to concatenate the two data frames. So the first data frame was DF. I will come down here and say so what do I say? Let's still call it let's call it NM to mean net margin, because we want to find the net margin subtracting the direct expenses. So I'll call it NM to mean net margin is equal to PD dot cut. Then in bracket I want to concat DF with sales GM. Then let's print and see what we have. So here we'll have nm. So if we print, we'll see what we have. So down here you can see we have so we've concatenated the other way around. Instead of starting with the df, you're supposed to start with the first cells, then df. So let me run code again. Now you can see we have a gross margin, then we also have indirect expenses, and down here we have a list of indirect expenses, and then we also have total indirect expenses down there. So now we want to get the net margin, and to get the net margin, what we'll do first, we'll subset data. We'll have a subset of data where we have the gross margin total, and then we also have the net the total indirect expenses, and then now we'll subtract the total indirect expenses from the gross margin. So first what we'll do, let's say we'll create another variable here called nm1. So net margin 1, net margin 1 is equal to so I want to take the first row because I want just to pick gross margin without the indirect expenses. So I just pick this row for gross margin. So what I will do, I'll say nm1 is equal to nm in bracket, not in bracket, rather in bracket. So I want to pick what we'll do is we'll say nm.nm.head, and head here now we'll pick the first row. The first row here we are not picking 0, we are picking 1. So now if I print nm1, we'll see what we have. So now you can see we have we've only picked the first row of that gross margin sales, and again I want to pick again the last row of indirect expenses. So let me call this one nm2. nm2 is equal to nm.tail, in bracket I also want to pick the last row of that data frame. So copy. So down here what we do, I want to show you how I just want us to see the last row of the data frame as a subset of data. So let's run the code again. So now you can see we have a data frame for gross margin, and we also have a data frame for indirect expenses. So we want to subtract indirect. Let me call this nm3 is equal to pd dot concat pd concat. So you want to concat nm1 with nm2, and then we want to get the sum of values for this data frame. But first, let's do this. Let me print nm2. We see what we have. nm2. It should be nm3, not nm2. nm3. So let's run the code again. So now you can see what we have as the data frame for nm3, but we want to get the difference of gross margin and the total indirect expenses. So I will add these values because the total indirect expenses values are negative. So instead of doing another data frame, so what I'll do here, I will say u.concat, and then whatever I have here, I will sum the values dot sum. So now when I print and I run the code again, it's giving the values, but it's not what we want. So let me do this. Let me just undo. Let me come down and say I think I made an error, so that was just an oversight. So here we can say that nm3 equal to nm3, and again we must reference all the column labels. Then I'll put this one here. Then now let's say dot sum dot sum. So now when you run the code, you'll see we have the still no, but what we want to have is nm3.log. Then we have here what we have here is this one is now net margin. It is not damaged. Just a moment. It should work out, otherwise not working out. So let me see. Double bracket. Oh yes, it's me. It's me who's not seeing the missing closing inverted comma. So this is how it's supposed to be done. So let me run the code again. So now we have the net margin. And net margin, we have the values as 1800, 800, 2400, negative 300, 500, and 800. So this is the net margin that we need again to concatenate to this other data frame that we are calling the net margin. So what we'll do again, we need to because we've if you check in this data frame, we have gross margin, indirect expense, and we also have total indirect expense. So down here we need to have net margin. So what we are supposed to do, we'll come here and say now that net margin is equal to pd dot concat so we want to concat the net margin. By default, if we write net margin, it will pick the values that we had up here as net margin, so don't get confused with this value here. So earlier we had said that variables change from time to time, but now this is a new variable. But now the net margin that is being picked here is the last the last values of the net margin that we had. So we had them here as m is equal to pd.concat sales and df. So here we'll say nm, and then we want to concat with the last row of nm3, which is here the net margin. So here we'll say nm3 dot tail. Then we always pick the last row, so we are saying in bracket 1 dot tail in bracket 1. So now again we can see the printout of name. So now when I run this code, you'll see what we have as the final data frame. So this is what we have as the final data frame from all we've done. So the original data frame was this one, first one. The first one was this one here, which came from this one came from dictionary, and then we changed we made this column as our index. So you can see down here we have this index column with the expenses. Then again we came down and added the total values. We added the values vertically, so down here you can see we have the total indirect expense. Then we moved down to creating another data frame for gross margin sales, and then we added that gross margin sales to the initial data frame. So you can see the steps that we did. We started from here. We set expenses column as index. Then we added the values. Then we created another data frame for gross margin sales. Then from there, now we also created this other data frame for getting the values or getting the net values of the net margin sales. So that was the steps. Now we want to see how we can add the values horizontally. We want to have some total values on the right side of the data frame. So let me just try to comment out all these other printouts, and we'll remain with one data frame, the last data frame. So now this is what we have as our the data frame that we did last. So what you want to do, you want to add this these columns horizontally. So I want to create quarters. We will have quarter 1, quarter 2, and then we'll also have YTD, meaning all the total values from January to June. So here we'll say adding data frame values horizontally. So I'll start by creating another column, but the column will be quarter 1, meaning we'll get the totals of January, February, and March. So I'll say an M, then in bracket, square bracket 1. So I want to do all of them at the same time, because we said that earlier. We said that we can assign multiple variables to multiple values. So we can have multiple values assigned to multiple variables. So we had seen that earlier when we are talking about variables. So here I want to say nm in square bracket quarter1. So let me just write qt1, then comma, square bracket 2, then the last one will have an square bracket not quarter3, but now this is now YTD, meaning total of the values it is equal to. So here I want to add the column, so I will start with an M in bracket I will have Jan, and the next one I will add plus and Feb plus and March will be square bracket, not curly brackets. So this is the first quarter, so I'll put this one in bracket just to differentiate it with the rest, then comma, then plus. So this one is not plus, but this one will be nm. So this should be April, then plus nm. And this should be May, and plus nm. It should be June. So again, this also I will put in normal brackets or other parentheses. So this other one, let me just go back. Go back again. This is the last one. So the last one, you need to add all the columns. So what I will do, let me first create brackets here, then I will take all these values, copy and put inside, but now I will not have this other brackets inside. Then here will be plus. Okay, and then let's try to make it more readable, so I'll put this one on the next line of code. I'll put it there. So now when I come down here and print nm, so you'll see what we have. June, I made an error in June, so this should be in small letters. Mirror the code again. So now you can see what we have as as our new data frame. Now we have January, April, March, and it's been frozen, so we cannot see May. And then we have quarter 1, quarter 2, and YTD. YTD is the total values, and then quarter 1 is January to March, quarter 2 is April to May. So that's how to add the values horizontally and vertically. And I hope you guys understood how it's being done, but before then, let me just try to make it a bit simpler up here. Now I'll try to not make it simpler, but just to show you if I did not get these multiple variables with multiple values being assigned to them. So I'll do it down here. I will come down here and try to do subtracting the values horizontally. So what I will do here, I will say the difference between quarter 1 and quarter 2. So I want to know the difference between quarter 1 and quarter 2. So we'll add it to just after YTD. So I'll say here, I'll write here NM bracket Q1, Q2 difference, Q1 underscore Q2, then difference. So this should be equal to excuse me, is equal to NM. Now I will take Q1 quarter 1 minus NM into a bracket quarter 2. So now when we run this code, you'll see what we get as the difference between quarter 1 and quarter 2, and it should be just after a YTD column. There's an error, unsupported operand for 2. So we cannot subtract a string from a string, but these are supposed to be values. Okay, so I've realized the problem, where the problem is. So let me just come back to where we were trying to we were adding the indirect expenses. So instead here we are supposed to add because indirect expenses we have a string, we created spaces. So let me just come back here and show you what needs to be done. So here, instead of writing a space, let's write 0 and then run. But before we run, so let me just come and put this one up here, but then put it there. So it is this this row for indirect expense as a subheading that is creating the error, because here we created a string of spaces, but now I've changed it back to now I'm creating the row with the zeros. So here we are saying that sales underscore gm.log indirect expenses is equal to 0, as opposed to the string of dashes. So now when I run this code, it should run, it should not create an error. So now you can see we have the indirect expenses with 0, but now we can see the difference that we were looking for quarter 1 and quarter 2. Now for us again to come and do away with the zeros, we'll come down here and say let me just copy this paste it down here. Then now we'll use spaces as opposed to zeros, just to change that row to just to make that row blank. So now you can see still not yet. So now it's not sales.gm, not sales gm.log. Now it is nm.log, because now we are using a different data frame. So when I run it now, you can see we should have a blank space like this one here. So this is what we are supposed to have. So we've seen now we can add rows values of a data frame vertically, and also add them horizontally, and we can also subtract vertically. And the same way we can also subtract the values of a data frame horizontally. So that's how to add, subtract values within a data frame. So I hope guys you understood how it's being done. So when we come to our next video, we'll move on with the financial automation, and then now we'll move to P&L monthly. So this is why I was just trying to show you an example of what we are going to do in the next video. So now we have January, February, March up to June. So practically what needs to happen when you are submitting your financials on a monthly basis. So we'll use the same principle when we are trying to automate our monthly income statement, but this we'll talk about in our next video. So thanks a lot for watching, and for those of you who have not subscribed, please do. For those of you who have subscribed, please thumbs up, and thanks a lot for your support. And please do share my videos with your friends so that we can learn together. So thanks a lot for watching, and let's meet again in the next video.